Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint. You're watching The Fine Print. Last week, a revelation by whistleblower Christopher Wiley forced Facebook users worldwide to sit up and acknowledge the hazards virtual world poses to their privacy. Wiley detailed how Facebook user data was misappropriated to influence the 2016 US presidential elections. So does this incident call for more stringent regulations for virtual content? And how can regulators ensure that users have more control over the purpose their data is used for? Shivani Saxena goes looking for some answers.
Facebook is being accused of breaking the promise of privacy. An UK-based political consulting firm called Cambridge Analytica seems to have reaped the benefits of it. Christopher Wiley, a former employee at Cambridge Analytica and now a whistleblower, revealed that the company bought user data from an app called This Is Your Digital Life. Users were allowed to download this app using their Facebook profiles. That gave the app developers access to Facebook data of not just those who downloaded the app, but their friends as well. This data of over 50 million users was then allegedly shared with Cambridge Analytica that allegedly used it to influence the 2016 US presidential elections.
What happened is that when people would go on Facebook, they were asked to take a quiz. And that quiz was collecting very detailed information about their likes, their dislikes, and various parts of their psychology. In short, they were doing an experiment on them psychologically. There were small disclaimers before this experiment happened, and you had to do a consent. But the problem is that the consent did not indicate to people the depth to which that information was going to be analyzed and then used later on.
This is not the first time Facebook has gotten into trouble for failing to protect users' data and privacy. Nearly 7 years ago, Facebook had entered into a consent decree with the US Federal Trade Commission, an independent US agency that protects consumers by stopping unfair, deceptive, and fraudulent market practices. Back then, Facebook had agreed to not share its users' data without their express consent. If in the Cambridge Analytica matter, the Federal Trade Commission determines that Facebook infringed the consent decree, it may lead to billions of dollars in fine for Facebook and change the manner in which tech giants and social media are regulated.
The consent decree is a list of things that Facebook must do. And some of the things that they had to do, they potentially violated when they allowed very unfettered access to user data. And also, one of the important things that's not often discussed quite yet about this is that Facebook had a responsibility to ensure that everyone who was accessing their data was doing so in a responsible manner. So Facebook is the steward for that data, and they have to make sure they're being good stewards, which means they have to make sure everyone else is behaving.
But Facebook has argued no wrongdoing and said that the data was procured legitimately by the app developers and shared and used against its privacy policy. So far, no legal action has been initiated against Facebook. But the critical question that this issue has thrown up is, do users understand what they are consenting to? Currently, when users download an app from their Facebook profiles, they are presented with a set of lengthy terms and conditions. Most do not read it. Those who do may not understand the implications of it. Tech giants like Facebook and Google have access to significant user data simply because of a number of applications that link back to users of Facebook and Gmail account. Though Facebook has a policy on what information it collects and how it is used and shared, experts say that terms and conditions give social media giant and the app developers a wide leeway to harness that data.
Users do not have a bargaining power. That's the case with many other instances in public life as well. Like, for instance, when you get into an aeroplane, or when you get into when you purchase a railway ticket, or when you purchase a bus ticket for that matter, there is no bargaining power that we have with with the service provider. So that's a concept which has been recognized under law for several centuries and under what's called as the standard form of contract, which means that there is a reasonable presumption that a person who is using a service such as this, for that matter, such as social media or any websites or apps, that he'll have to abide by the terms and conditions, but it should be unambiguous, and the consent for actual use should be laid out, the purpose should be laid out clearly so that the user understands what he is signing up for. So broadly, the practice in the market, which is not just in India but elsewhere as well, is that the users do not understand it, and we are all plagued by what is known as consent fatigue, which means that a party is troubled, or in fact completely unaware of the terms and conditions, because it's literally impossible for anyone to read through and understand the full terms and conditions which is there on any website for that matter.
Back home, experts say that legal framework is insufficient to address this problem. The Information Technology Act and related rules only treat a certain kind of information as sensitive and protection worthy. Information such as passwords, financial information, and biometric data. Data that doesn't fit in these categories is not protected similarly. The relationship between Facebook and its user is also governed by contract law. Under the Indian law, a legally valid contract requires informed consent. Unless the person consenting to the terms of a contract understands exactly what he is consenting to, the contract is not legally valid. Does this lend an ear to the woes of an Indian user?
When you are supposed to provide informed consent, there should be, just like any other contract, there should be a meeting of minds between the parties, in the sense that a person should be well aware of the fact as to why he is giving the information, what is the purpose for it will be used, etc. So there seems to be at least a large number of population seems to believe that they would not have given consent for use of their data for use such as this, which is to target them, to shape their political opinions, etc.
Consent is always linked to what the consent is being given for. There is no question of saying, I give consent, or Facebook hereby takes consent for your data to be used in whatever way I want. That's something that is not something that, let us say, for example, currently the US regulations or the European regulations permit. Indian law also will not sort of currently, under the way consent is accepted, will not also accept this. Consent therefore has to be specific to data being taken for A use, B use, or C use. It needs to be specific about that use. And it cannot be something which is open-ended as to say that as long as I have taken your consent, I can use the data in whatever form I want. That sort of a consent is not consent and will not therefore stand the test of legal scrutiny.
You know, if you look back through the history of regulation in any country, what you can see is that if there's a law on the books, it doesn't mean that it's going to fix the problem. What generally fixes the problem is when finally a company steps forward and says, look, we're going to do the right thing. Let's work together. Let's involve the community. The community is us, everyone who uses Facebook, and let's create something that is ethical and trustworthy. And one company that did this a very long time ago was Microsoft. You may recall that at one point in time, way back in the 90s, Microsoft just had security problem after security problem and multiple security flaws. And finally, Bill Gates said, enough. We are going to become a trusted company with computer security. And he ramped up Microsoft's computer security, and it was a huge effort. And you know what? It got better. And that's what's needed here.
More than half of the world's internet users are also users of Facebook. Now, with that comes great room for positive impact and social change. But at the same time, there is definitely room for abuse, as has been clear in the Cambridge Analytica case. Now, experts are of the view that law in relation to data and policy is still developing. It is yet to evolve and it is yet to be tested. Will Facebook be able to keep up? This is Shivani Saxena for Bloomberg Quint, Mumbai.
For now, Mark Zuckerberg has been invited to the European Parliament to clarify if Facebook's data is being used to manipulate democracy. Back in 2016 too, Facebook had committed to the UK authorities that it will pause using data of UK WhatsApp users for advertisements or product improvement purposes. Commitments such as consent decrees in the US and potential penalties and undertakings in the UK should prompt regulators in India to fill the gap that exists in our laws to make social giants more accountable.